Welcome back to Random Quantum Stuff. On today's broadcast, how much does quantum mechanics even influence a particle's path? Different very smart people have answered this question very differently the last 100 years. And so, I will only discuss the smart people with, in my opinion at least, the smartest interpretations. Starting with one of my favorites, the physicist and research scientist Hugh Everett III. He's also the father of this dude called Mark Oliver Everett, who just happens to be the core and main singer of this band called Eels. I've loved their music for years, and it is a weird thing to admit, but I'm like the biggest fan of both of them, separately, somehow. Mr. Everett III came up with this thing called the multiple world principle, which simply put is the idea that every time a quantum event occurs, the universe splits, creating a new parallel reality for each possible outcome. Pretty neat, huh? Well, yes and no. You see, Everett's idea was radical, because it removed the need for this thing called wave function collapse. A concept in traditional quantum mechanics where a particle's probability distribution suddenly narrows down to a single outcome when observed. You know, that double slit shit. This might sound complicated or even a bit decoherent, because it quite literally is. It's like the universe choosing just one reality out of the many possibilities. And like I said before, in Everett's view, there is no need for that choice. Instead, all outcomes occur, each in its own separate world. And trust me, there are a lot of those. Maybe an infinitely large lot of those. Congratulations, against all odds you somehow managed to win up in this world, where this monster that is ferocious, tyrannical even, after millions of years of evolution became this bird creature that humans mass produce in order to eat their undeveloped offspring. Here comes the fucking airplane, Johnny. Say, yeah, we live inside a simulation, bro, is what a certain friend of mine would say right now. And although I had always thought this to be one of his very annoying catchphrases, the odds of him just telling the truth are, weirdly enough, actually surprisingly fucking real. On TikTok or whatever, some scientists really like to explain how and why this is. And although I am not a scientist, I'll have a go at it as well. Luckily, it's not that complicated, really. Given recent accomplishments in the video game industry, it's not even unrealistic to envision a future where we create our own hyper-realistic simulations. As such, it's also not hard to imagine that an advanced civilization could have done the same long before us. And if they could, what to stop simulations within simulations, inside, you know, more simulations. There was a good chance you had already heard of this specific concept, but it does create this interesting scenario where the creators of a specific simulation can potentially decide whether the inhabitants will have free will or not, depending on how their universe is programmed and shit. Meaning even the creators of our simulation might not have had free will depending on whether their creators granted it to them. This is some real Inception shit, are you still following? Basically, the existence of our universe, or maybe even you, could potentially have been set in stone like 3 simulations ago. Heck, we might just be a background prop inside a video game, you know. I hope it's not some weird fetish game like Scientifically Accurate Dinosaur Mating Simulator 2021. Talking about fetishes, this dirty old man said the randomness of quantum behavior is almost neglectable on a microscopic scale, as the randomness of countless quantum events balances itself out. It's the law of large numbers, you know. Even though electrons teleport from place to place and protons just race in space, it's fine, he said. It's just fucking fine, okay? Leave me and my midgets alone, he said. Can you please shut up? It's like 3 AM in the fucking morning, you fucking dickhead. This is just like Einstein said, God doesn't play dice, meaning the entire universe might just be following a path that it cannot deviate from. Good news for all the fairy tales out there, because fate might just be real, alright, but at the same time it feels like we're all just stuck in a perfect prison with no escape in sight. So, that's it then, there is nothing left. We are all just soulless particles with no purpose, no escape, and for some of us even no bitches. Consciousness is just a funny byproduct of the carbon-based biological apparatus that you see in the mirror every morning, and it and everything else for that matter is just obediently following its script as we continue our pointless play in this grand theater of existence. There's just one and only one will, and it will always be the will of the universe. Hey, Will. Do you want to get out of this place? Hey, Bill, thanks for the offer, man, but we can never be free, remember? No, there might actually be something like free will. Congratulations, you made it to the second part, where all the happy philosophers live and where free will does exist. Welcome to pam indeterminism. Yeah, I know, they only just slapped the word in front of it, go cry about it or something. Indirect, indecent and indistinguishableness. The in just flips around the meaning. Meaning, indeterminism entails the idea that the universe is in fact not predetermined. So, do your little happy dance and throw your script out of the fucking window if you want to, but only if you want to, as the choice might just be yours and yours alone. Okay, remember that cool Einstein quote I dropped earlier? Well, this other guy who is from Denmark and is good at modeling atoms or whatever did not agree with what Mr. Einstein said. In fact, he said something back like, "Hey Albert, no hate, but the quantum world does in fact dictate fate. And God does play with dice, especially when they're quantum-sized." You dumb fuck. And thus the stage was set for the most epic metaphysical debate of the century, where Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr argued over the true nature of reality and quantum mechanics. It was a disagreement that started in 1927 and still haunts the halls of physics today. Yes, we are talking determinism versus indeterminism. And because Bohr was dead set on proving his point, he and his buddy Professor Werner Heisenberg collaborated at the University of Copenhagen and cooked up a new way to interpret quantum mechanics, which, believe it or not, to this day is still the most commonly accepted theory of, well, reality. They called it the Copenhagen interpretation, a very original name, I know. So, do you and your TikTok brain still remember that stuff I said about wave function collapse? Well, that was basically the Copenhagen interpretation at its core, stating particles do not have definitive states until they are observed. On top of this principle sounding very uncertain, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, why would particles behave differently when interacting with a measuring device or perhaps even our consciousness? Heck, how does having a consciousness even work? I mean, the atoms that make up your brain shouldn't be any different from all the other stuff in the universe, right? And if, let's say, the Copenhagen interpretation is actually correct and the universe is truly random, wouldn't we be just as helpless as we would be in a deterministic reality, having no free will and being nothing more than just some mindless slaves of the quantum world? We would be, unless maybe, just maybe, this thing called strong emergence exists. It's an idea proposed by this guy, and it states new properties can emerge from stuff that are not predictable or reducible to the system's underlying parts. So it's magic? No, it's a well-considered idea that complexity can lead to entirely new behaviors, such as consciousness and maybe, possibly and hopefully free will as well. Yes, like I said, it's magic. Okay, while it's true that many philosophers find this interpretation a bit too convenient, imprecise, or sometimes even fully redundant, it does a good job of unraveling the mystery of some absurdities, such as consciousness and free will. Besides, we do not have much else to go on, do we, when trying to justify the existence of our own free will? Again, the Copenhagen interpretation, if true, shows us the chaos of the quantum, but it doesn't hand us the pen to write our own destinies. It speaks of particles and uncertainty, not of free will. And let's just say, if by any miracle our consciousness is able to precisely control the quantum particles to its own accordance, thus creating what could be called free will, would that not be a little too convenient as well? Almost as if some supernatural entity, a god one might say, is responsible for all of this? Could be. I don't know. Look, as I said before, I am not a scientist. I'm not even any tist for that matter. My favorite writers are Ovid and Geronimo Stilton, and not once in my life have I been able to pronounce the word flocky knocky nicky pedification. Even so, we humans ask questions, such as, is the universe playing chess or rolling a dice? Is free will real or just a puppet show in disguise? Perhaps we'll never know. So, there you go. Shackled by the silent curse of your DNA, you stare into the infinite abyss, wondering whether every thought you ever had was even yours. Try not to get too depressed thinking about it, apparently that shit can be pretty bad for you, says my doctor at least. But you know what, fuck this, take my hand if you will, and make sure to have actually read the script beforehand, as only then can we at least pretend to dance freely and happily until we, you know, most likely, inevitably, and perhaps finally die and shit. Good night, my friend.